If your bike's battery is struggling, it might just need to be charged, it might be going bad and need to be replaced, or the battery might be innocent and your bike's charging system could be the problem. Whatever the case, we'll help you track down the issue so you don't get stranded. Let's open up the shop manual. This episode of the Shop Manual is brought to you by Kershaw, my go-to unboxing knife and a tool I carry with me everywhere. Get 20% off your order at KershawKnives.com with discount code 23TSM20. You can get a ton of information about your bike's battery and charging system health with 3 very simple tests. All you need is a multimeter. These are 30 or 40 bucks at any hardware store or auto parts store or online. And it's an incredibly useful diagnostic tool, so definitely worth investing in. You will also need a battery charger, and then you need whatever tools are required to get to your bike's battery, which is usually just the key. Testing a tired or dead battery is only going to confirm that it's unhappy. So the first thing we want to do is give the battery the chance to get fully juiced up on a charger. If the battery is so low that the charger throws an error code or it just never gets to 100% charge, then you already know you're dealing with a doorstop. Assuming the charger does show 100%, you want to remove the battery from the charger and then allow it to rest for at least several hours, but ideally overnight, because the first test we're going to do with the multimeter is to check the at-rest or static voltage of the battery. And in order for the results to be accurate, it's important that the battery hasn't done any work recently. All right, we know motorcycles and cars use 12-volt batteries, but a fully charged 12-volt battery should actually show 12.6 volts, not 12.0. And that's because it's made up of 6 2.1-volt cells. So even though the battery says 12 volts on the outside, if it's actually registering 12 volts, that sucker is closer to dead than fully charged. With lithium-ion batteries, the number is even higher. They usually show 13.6 volts fully charged. The point is, the number on the battery is not the number you're looking for, which is why it's important to reference a state of charge chart when working with your battery. All right, on to testing. Take your multimeter and set it to volts DC. That'll be the symbol with the straight line and the dots. And then take the red positive lead and connect it to the positive terminal, and take the negative and put it on the negative, and note your voltage. Now, some people can get a little spooked working around electricity, but nothing is going to get sparky here unless you accidentally bridge the battery terminals with something metal or bridge the positive terminal to the frame, which is also attached to the negative terminal. So don't do that and you'll be all set. So this battery is registering 12.33 volts, which if we reference a state of charge chart for an AGM battery, means it's only at about 70%. And since it just came off a charger, that suggests that this battery is getting old and weak. Now, 12.3 volts is still what I would consider serviceable. It will start this motorcycle, but it's not going to get any better. So the question is, how much longer will it start the bike? Plus, if you operate a motorcycle with a weak battery, it puts more stress on the charging system, and those components are a lot harder and more expensive to replace than a battery. This battery may be suspect, but it is strong enough to move on to our next procedure, the cranking volts test. The purpose of this test is to put the battery under load with the starter motor. So we're going to be pressing the starter button, but we don't want the engine to fire up. So you can either flip the kill switch if your bike will still crank with that off, or you can do what I'm going to do, which is pull the fuel pump fuse so the bike won't start. With your multimeter leads attached to the battery, we are going to be pressing the starter button for several seconds. Now, I've got these little clamps on the end of my leads, which are pretty handy. If you don't have these, you might have to reach over or get someone else to press the starter button for you, and they're going to do it for 5 to 6 seconds. Okay, so what we've got here is 10.48 volts. That's actually a pretty good number. You don't want to see anything below 9.6. If you do, that is another strong indicator that the battery is losing capacity. It's losing the ability to turn that starter. So all batteries have a lifespan of about 4 to 5 years. The internal chemistry just starts to wear out. So if you are testing your battery and it's in that 4 to 7 year range and it's testing at figures that aren't particularly good, another strong suggestion that it's time to replace your battery before it leaves you stranded. At this point, we've got a pretty good understanding as to whether the battery is strong and healthy or if it's getting weak. But regardless of how those first two tests shake out, there is one more procedure you should do in order to evaluate the function of your bike's stator and regulator rectifier. Because sometimes the battery can be weak, not because there's anything wrong with it, but because your bike's charging system isn't working properly. For this third and final test, we're going to be starting the motorcycle to check the output of the charging system. So, with your lead still attached to the battery, you're going to go ahead and flip the kill switch or put the fuse back in the fuse box, then fire the bike up, raise the engine speed to a couple of thousand RPM, and take note of the voltage on your multimeter. What we're looking for is about 14.4 volts. The range changes depending on your motorcycle, but typically you don't want to see anything lower than 13.5 and nothing higher than 15. And that's the amount of voltage the bike is supposed to put out to keep the battery charged while the engine is running. So if you see less than 13.5 or higher than 15, that suggests an issue with your stator, which is responsible for creating alternating current when the bike is running, or your regulator rectifier, which converts that AC current to DC current to charge the battery and then tops it at a safe 14.5 volts-ish. Testing the stator and the regulator rectifier are beyond the scope of this video, but the only equipment you need to do it is the multimeter and of course the specs for your model motorcycle, which you can very easily find in your bike's shop manual. To recap, if you want to check your bike's battery and charging system health, start by measuring the resting voltage. You want to see 12.6 volts for a lead acid battery or 13.6 volts for a lithium-ion battery. From there, you can stress test the battery with the starter, and you don't want to see the voltage drop below 9.6 volts. Finally, if you start the motorcycle and monitor the voltage at the battery, you'll get a really good idea of how well your bike's charging system is working. Pretty simple, right? If we weren't making a video, I could have knocked that out in 1, maybe 2 minutes. And now you know how to do it too. Thanks for watching this episode of the Shop Manual. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you learned something. And I gotta say, I enjoy it. It's a huge privilege to be able to teach people about motorcycles so they can understand them and work on them better. So if you like what we do here, you like the information we bring and the questions we answer, just know that the Shop Manual is produced with funds when people like you make a purchase at RevZilla. So if you want to support the Shop Manual, support RevZilla. And if you want more motorcycle content, you want written reviews and news, cruise on over to Common Tread, where we are constantly publishing new content.